Hello and welcome to THST Official, the official podcast of the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. We are back. We've had a summer break, as have most people involved in football. And here we are. I'm joined by Rachel Martin and Rob White. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
So, as stated previously, our plan with the podcast moving forward is to actually talk about our, the aspects of our monthly newsletter and to fill you on the work that we've been doing as a supporters trust, to give you a bit of background and any other goings on, any other bits and pieces that we are working on as a supporters group for you, supporters of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. But we start, as always, just by bringing you in, Rob, to talk about how people can join us and why it's so important that Spurs supporters do.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah. It's well, as I see it, it's pretty simple. It's a no-brainer, really. We're an independent, not-for-profit membership, and we're run by fans for the fans. One of our sort of areas of importance is that we aim to ensure that fans' voices are heard at both club level and national level. And we are all volunteers. We are voted in as a board by our members. And our sort of main points of work with the club and nationally, I guess, are ticketing pricing policy, safety, policing, and general governance, really. So over the years, we've managed to establish successful dialogue with the club. Obviously, that dialogue fluctuates. It goes up and down. We'll be honest about that. We're there to challenge the club, I think, and to ask questions on behalf of the supporters. But also we're there to sort of work and try and maintain relationships within the club at different levels. And just to ensure that really the voice is heard. So the simple thing, you can become a full member at THSTofficial.com. Becoming a full member costs £10 a year. There's also the option of associate member, but really we'd rather that you cough up the price of a pie and a pint, I think it is, at the new stadium, and pay that tenner, and that tenner will give you a voice and will ensure that you can vote on who's elected and sort of join in, get yourself heard and voice your opinion, really.
Thanks, Rob. Important for us to mention, of course, that it's the cost of a pie and a pint at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and not at other stadiums in London, where it would cost you considerably more. But I won't say any more than that for the time being. We're recording this on Thursday night, so just after the Chelsea game, before the Wolves game. We might touch on the Chelsea game a little bit. That was quite a special comeback, wasn't it? I think we all enjoyed this minute. But also, we're in the middle of the transfer window, and I guess this season's been different to more recent transfer windows in that we've gone in and we've got a bit of business done early, and I guess we've signed players in the positions that we would have said in May that we needed to strengthen. So I was quite excited by, I know my kids were as well, Ivan Perisic and Bissouma. But what about you? Who's anyone else that you're particularly excited about, or is there anyone else we should be signing before the end of the transfer window?
Yeah, I think for me it was Richarlison. He's I don't know. I just find him a really exciting player. I really enjoyed him at Everton, and he feels like someone who can play across a lot of positions. I think you've already seen the sort of impact of his energy and sort of talent, but also a sort of a cockiness, which I really like in a player. And I know when he left Everton, people were, the fans were absolutely distraught, and they just said, he's the most amazing guy, look after him, a bit like we felt about Dele, I think, except I think that maybe Richarlison's on a bit more of an upward trajectory, bless Dele. But yeah, I'm really excited about him. Likewise, Bissouma, well, really all of them. And I've just loved the fact that we've not been worrying about our crown jewels being stolen this year. It's been really quite a relaxing and an enjoyable window.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, Rachel. And it just sees, I think the Chelsea game was a really good illustration where we could make really good positive changes from the bench. And you sort of cast your mind back watching that and you think, okay, this time last year, if he's going to take Son or Kane off, what options did Conte have then? And it seems that we've got options in most positions now. And actually, maybe it is just rose-tinted glasses. I don't know, but it seems like everybody's fitted in quite harmoniously. And even I mean, there are players obviously that aren't featuring that have been frozen out, but that's the same with every club. But the players that have come in seem to have already integrated pretty well into the team. So yeah, I think it's been some really good and really shrewd business as well, I must say. Yeah, so I think for the money that is outlaid, I think we've actually created some good options basically.
Yeah, I think Richarlison and Romero in the same is particularly spectacular. And we talk about, I'll say S-housery, you know, the word I mean. We sort of lacked a bit when Lamela left, and you saw that when Richarlison came on and just started chucking himself around. It could be good. And of course, first full season for Kulusevski and Bentancur as well, who've hit the ground running, and they Kulusevski just gets better and better, doesn't he? Particularly in this Southampton game. So yeah, reasons to be cheerful. Hopefully, maybe one more coming in before the end of the season, before the end of the transfer window. That would be nice. New contract for Harry Kane. That would be even better. So we'll see. But like you say, Rachel, reasons to be optimistic, and nice not to be worrying about our best players leaving, which is probably one of the first times I can remember for a good 10 to 15 years that we weren't worried about Bale and Modric or whoever leaving in the summer. So no, absolutely all good. I think so. So that's the football side covered. We're going to talk now about more of what we've been doing at the Supporters Trust in the summer. I'm going to bring you in, Rachel, because we had a board meeting. We've got new board structure, new officers, and I'm sure a lot of our members are aware of those through our updates through a newsletter and our website. But for those that haven't followed that, and for those unaware, maybe you can just give us an update, Rachel, on what's been happening.
Yeah, I think, yes, I'm sure everybody or most people will already know, but after a very long and illustrious careers as co-chairs of the Trust, Cat Law and Martin Cloak announced to us that they, and to the rest of the fan base, that they would be standing down at the next board meeting, which was about 6 weeks ago, I think now. And as well as that Adam Bailey, who's the treasurer and has also been in this trust board for a very long time, he will be stepping down at the end of August. So that was a massive amount of experience and talent and commitment that would be leaving the board. So while Adam is actually leaving us at the end of this month, Kat and Martin have stepped down as co-chairs, but they're staying with us on the board until the next AGM, which is in February. So they obviously want to make sure that we're all fully briefed and that there's a really smooth transition, and that lots of introductions are made to other Spurs groups, the press, and also within the Football Supporters Association. So we had conversations between us, and I was really pleased to be invited to stand as co-chair along with Steve Cavalier, who has been on one of these podcasts as well. And I certainly wouldn't have considered it without a co-chair. There is so much pressure and so many different things to do, as well as the rest of your life. And obviously it is a voluntary role. But Steve is an absolutely fantastic person to be working as co-chair with. And I'm going to really, I hope, really going to enjoy taking on this new role. And I hope I'll do it well. I'll certainly be putting my heart and soul into it. And I was really pleased also that because Steve had been the secretary, that meant that Kunal Shah, who is fantastic as well, he's kindly agreed to take on the secretary role. And we're co-opting somebody. We're just in that process at the moment, but we're going to be co-opting a new person onto the board to take over as treasurer. So it is a time of great change, and it's fantastic that the board is actually very stable and that there are obviously you two and others that we do the podcasts with and that we work with, who will still be with us and will be helping us to really sort of look at what we want our work to look like over the next few years and what we want to achieve, because it is a truism that every year is a crucial year for Tottenham Hotspur on and off the pitch, and this is also another crucial year.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I think as well on the pitch as well, this is going to be a crucial year. But I know we've done on the pitch stuff, but yeah, a lot of feeling about where we're going under Conte as well. And but thank you for explaining the changes, Rachel. And I think it's one thing I should say to anybody listening. Obviously, we have our website, THTofficial.com. We send out newsletters, as I've mentioned. We've got our social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter, which I'm sure people are aware of. But please do log on and have a look around, because that's where you get your information. And we try and release information as quickly as we can. Usually, the day after a board meeting, or even on the same day sometimes. So if that's an area of interest for you, please do log on and stay up to date via our channels. So we move on to areas that we're actually working on now, and I guess the nitty gritty, the stuff that we do for supporters, the work that all board members do voluntarily for our supporters, and a big part of that work, Rachel, is something that's been going on for a while, and so we've all been involved in, but also one that should have significant interest for football fans everywhere, and that's the fan-led review. So what's happened there, and what's the latest?
Well, yes, the fan-led review, it's starting to feel like it was quite a while ago, but one of the key things that came out of that was the need for an independent football regulator, and also for much greater and more effective fan involvement at board level of football clubs across the pyramid, not just the big six in inverted commas. And we've been working alongside, obviously in the spirit of the review, we've been having conversations with Spurs and also with the other Spurs official groups, such as Proud Lily Whites, Spurs Reach and Spurs Ability. And we know that some of the other big clubs have just started their fan advisory boards. But we feel really strongly that this is such an opportunity. We don't want to rush into something that isn't going to really make a difference and be worthwhile. So we've taken our time. We're all, I think, very much on the same page about what this needs to look like and the impact it needs to have. And we're really hopeful that I would say probably by the next podcast, maybe we'll be able to share a lot more about what shape it's going to be, how it's all going to work, and the sort of impact it will have. But there's been a lot of negotiations going on, a lot of conversations, but a lot of unanimity between the Spurs groups, and that's always really good to know that everybody really wants what's for the best. And one of the things that I've been doing since joining is also getting to know the people at the Football Supporters Association. So I went to their AGM and met some people there. And what's really good about those kind of things is that you're learning, and we share our learning with other clubs. So even though we may have quite strong feelings about some of the other London clubs, there is actually a lot of learning and cooperation at this sort of level, because otherwise you can't achieve anything. So, for example, if you go back to the away price ticket caps, nobody could have achieved that just as one club. You have to work together. And we're doing the same, I think, with the fan-led review. We're making sure that everybody is sticking to what is likely to become the Premier League standard for fan engagement, which should be released again very soon.
Great, thank you very much. Another big bit of work that we did over the summer as well that's worth mentioning is our annual survey, which we send out towards the end of every season. I think this year it was the 8th annual survey of Spurs fans, which revealed a really strong backing for football at the club level, as you've just said, Rachel, and there are other concerns of broadcast issues and ticket pricing and the such, which we'll touch on. An interesting part for me actually was that within the findings, last year's results were probably quite difficult reading for our owners, ENIC, in the wake of the European Super League debacle and I guess support showing at the time on the pitch. Nuno Santos had come in, hadn't done very well. Before that, it was the end of Jose Mourinho's reign, and Ryan Mason had been in temporary charge. So there was some real negative feedback last year, whereas this year there's been a more promising offering and outing this time around, with 59% of respondents judging their steward of the club to have improved over the 21-22 season. So that's a pretty significant swing from the 75% who considered it to have declined the previous year. So I guess it shows that the support or lack of it for the owners of the club, and some would say it's obvious, but it I guess it's not always, depends on what's going on the pitch. You know, it's a fundamental part. You know, if you get it right on the pitch, a lot of the time the fans are happy. And I guess another side of that is seeing the club do their transfer window early, as we've seen, and doing their transfer work early, as we've seen, in comparison to previous years where we've got to this stage and we've not signed anyone. So it's good to see. Significantly and overwhelming 91% of respondents supported the principle of clubs qualifying for competitions solely on sporting merit, which I always like to point on, because that goes back to what was a real, I guess, a real criticism of the ownership last year when we were talking about the European Super League. So I guess hopefully lessons have been learnt from that. But an interesting insight into the survey, and one I'm sure the owners of our football club were taking a look at. Were there any sort of key areas for you, Rob, that you wanted to pick up on from the survey?
Well, first thing I think, I'm sure you'd agree, you both agree, what a fantastic piece of work this is. And just thanks to the people that were involved with this. Speaking as somebody who's always disliked figures, particularly, the sort of amount of detail that's come out of this is quite incredible. I think what it showed is probably the first full season in the new stadium. It showed that things are getting right. 77% of those who attended were satisfied or very satisfied with the atmosphere. It was quite interesting about, I think 69% felt that flags and banners could help lift the crowd. So there's still sort of things that need to be done, I guess, need to be looked at. But as a whole, I think that there seemed to be quite a deep feeling of satisfaction, and maybe that just coincided with when the survey went out, when things were turning around. From my point of view, there was interesting, because I'm obviously involved with transport. Somebody actually made a really good suggestion after the survey, where we might look at postcodes of respondents. So maybe that's something we'll look at building in next year, and particularly that was sort of prevalent. I'm always trying to get the club to look at other means, and obviously cycling is a big one. Only 2% of UK-based respondents cycled to at least some home matches, and there's still not enough provision that's being made. I seem to be constantly in dialogue with the club about issues for parking, cycle parking, and 44% expressed dissatisfaction with cycle parking and provision among those who cycle. And I've started talking about, maybe the club should be looking at some form of, for one thing, they should be looking at providing better cycle locking provision, but maybe some sort of reward for people that are going to cycle. Something that, I know, not sport related, but there's other areas in Europe where people who cycle into city centres are given loyalty discount, for, as a means to incentivise people. They were the sort of 2 or 3 main things that I pulled out of it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I guess another key area for the club and for the club, right? And I guess, and to be fair, they have got it right, because I think a lot of people are very happy with the food and drink offering at the stadium. It is catering, and Rachel, you lead on that for us, don't you? And and there's been some new dishes on the menu. So I'll hand over to you, our catering expert, to bring us up to date on that.
I'm happy to chip in, Rachel. Chip in. Do you see that? See what I did
Yeah,
there?
very good.
Because obviously I was at the, well, I won't spoil the surprise, but there we go.
Yes, I mean, I have to say, I've always found the catering team to be pretty amazing, actually. They're so passionate about what they do, and they really do try to get it right. And they're very open to feedback, and obviously feedback is varied, and also it varies on how we did on the pitch, because the beer always tastes nicer and the queues are shorter if we win, or you don't mind, then they're not shorter, you don't mind them being longer if we win. But yes, the club introduced lots of new dishes this year. And we had a really good meeting with Mark, the executive chef, who was so impressive. And a range of dietary requirements that he sort of considers. And also, I think what was really noticeable this season is that he's put more sort of things which I would consider to be sort of more healthy options in the tap-ins around the sides of the stadium. Because normally when I eat and drink around the side before the matches and go to the south after, but it's basically sausage rolls and pies, and which is great, and we know that's what most people want to eat, but not everybody does, and often it's nice to have a wrap, or in fact they put ramen soups in around the side this time, and they were pretty amazing. And I thought it was interesting also that they're very aware of the Twitter account Footy Scran, and they really want their dishes shown on it, and what a good price they charge and everything else. So I think there's been a lot of work put in over the summer to sort of revive the menus. But though I think that there were really quite substantial problems in the service of the drinks before the first home game, I'm very prepared to accept, as most people who complained were also prepared to accept, at the beginning of a season, you're going to have lots of new staff, and a lot of them are young, and we know that it's difficult recruiting staff in any of the service industries at the moment. There are a lot of the people don't live here anymore, and also they've chosen to go and work at Deliveroo and Get Here and everywhere else. But nevertheless, if you're having lots of new staff, you need to have lots of supervision, and people need to be trained properly. There are problems with some of the cups that are leaking. The club know that and are addressing it. But some of the queues, it's pretty impossible. In actual fact, when I contacted the club, they said that the takings were up. So it wasn't like the queues were so bad because nobody was serving at the front. It was really that so many people got there really early. I mean, I got there really early, and it was pretty full, because I think sunny day, we were so excited, couldn't wait for the season to start. Let's get there. And, so there was a huge pressure. And yes, they did run out of some things. Not all the staff knew to point out, for example, if water bottles had run out, which the supply, there were always water bottles in the stadium, but they weren't always available to all the stands. And it's not very helpful to have someone say, we don't have tap water. They don't have tap water at all the stands, but there are water fountains in all of the concourses in lots of places. So we've said how important it is, for example, to make sure that they can direct people to the right services. Let's hope that this time it'll be better speed of service. But we're going to be doing a survey after this match, And we'd really encourage people to A, fill the survey in, and B, be really, really explicit about where your problems are. So don't just put, I was in East Lower. If you could put, I was at the tap in by whatever number it was, and then the club can really address the specific issues that are arising.
It will be interesting actually to see what it's like on Saturday. Obviously, this podcast is going to go out after the Wolves game. It's been recorded before the Wolves game. It will go out probably early next week. So after the Wolves game. And obviously it's an early kickoff. We've got the train strike. So it will be interesting to see how many people get there early, how people fare. I mean, it's worth touching on, I guess, isn't it? Rob, you're our sort of transport guy. Do you think therell be an increase in cyclists maybe for the Wolves game,
I think yeah, I mean, before I moved, I used to live about a 15-minute cycle from the ground, and the other side of Crouch End, and well, it's hilly, so I would cycle from 15 or 20 minutes easily. So maybe people within a half an hour, 45-minute radius will look at the weather report on Saturday and think, oh, actually, yeah, pretty good report, weather report. Again, there is the issue which we really do need to work. I need to work hard at trying to get the club to resolve. But I realise there are issues around space for parking bikes around the immediate locale, and we have had lots of conversations about it. There are bike parks in Sainsbury's car park. There's bike parking. So if anyone's coming along for the first time, I mean, there are a couple in the community centre and the school, which I can never remember the name of. I think it's St Joseph's on the corner. There are bike parking provision there, but I think it will be a logical response this week, because as you already alluded to, there are going to be massive problems this weekend with the strike action. I think the club have been quite good in their messaging around this. It's all quite clear. It's on their website. We've also been messaging around it on our Twitter feed and social media. And I think really, if anyone has any issues, they need to just have a look on the club website or on our Twitter feed. The club have been working with I think they're Big Green Coaches. I'm just going to double check. Yeah. Big Green Coach. So if you go to biggreencoach.co.uk, there's information there about coaches that they are running. I know quite a few of those. I had a look earlier today, and quite a few of those have sold out already, and the club have increased provision on those. I guess the bottom line is that there is really only so much the club can do in this sort of unique situation of a strike.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely out of their hands. Completely. I guess if we can hope for anything, is that we when we all struggle to get to the ground, we get the performance and we get the win, and it's a great atmosphere, and everyone goes home happy, and it makes the journey home a lot easier, doesn't it? But the atmosphere I thought the atmosphere against Southampton was really good, and I know towards the end of last season, particularly the Arsenal game, Martin and Gary Neville were talking quite fondly about it being the best atmosphere they've ever heard in the Premier League, which is high praise indeed. I know you touched on it earlier, Rob, when you were talking about the survey, but are there any more sort of atmosphere initiatives and murals, flags, that kind of thing? Anything coming up that we should mention?
Well, during the summer, of course, we had the exciting Son mural which popped up, which is at the back of Stoneleigh Road. It's actually in Bruce Grove, and originally that was up. So one of the guys that painted part of the Ledley King mural, the outstretched part of the Ledley King mural, Nasha, who's become a friend of mine, he did that sort of his own volition. Actually, his son, I don't think he'll mind me telling you this, the very quick version. Nasha is, for his sins, a West Ham fan, but he's a fantastic artist. His son, because there is a Lord, his son is a Tottenham fan, and his son absolutely idolises our son, which is, so Nasha ended up doing that image as a sort of a gift, a love gift to his son, basically. And originally it was only going to be up for, I think it was a month. It's still there because It's at the back of there's a paint shop, a spray paint shop there. They're one of the biggest in London, and they love it. Basically, they love it being up. So it's still there. It's on Stoneleigh Road. So far as other murals through us, I think we explained at the time, or I explained at the time, that I sort of see our role as helping other people to facilitate now. And if other supporters groups, anyone listening from various supporters groups, if they want to get a mural commissioned, then I'd be more than happy to help them in that project. I think also, again, it's I think there are sort of difficulties at the moment because of the number of proposed building works in the area with locations, but that's not to say it's impossible. So I'm really I'd be really happy to help anybody that decides they want to get a mural up and give them advice on that. I think also we've been looking at we've been helping the people with the flags. Somebody helped me with their name. I can't remember what I'm looking for it as a
flag, isn't it?
Sorry?
THFC flags?
Is it THSC flags, or I'm
so.
looking for it at the moment. And I know they're doing a really good job, actually. Again, we're sort of in a facilitating role, and we've been sort of helpful. They're always looking out for people to help on match day. So again, look at our feed, and anything that can raise match day atmosphere, we're fully supportive of.
Absolutely. I always find what really helps me with the atmosphere is 4 pints of neck oil before a game. That always leads to a very good atmosphere. But I recommend it to over 18s, obviously. I take some minors with me and they do not drink it. But my son's now 18, my eldest, and he's having a couple of neck oils every game, and he's now finding the delights of how neck oil can help you enjoy a football match more. And obviously other beers are available, but it always helps to lead to the atmosphere. One area that we've not always cover now is ticketing, and that would normally be Anthula, who's sadly can't be with us this evening. So I'll update on ticketing from a survey perspective, in that there was good and bad news, I guess, for the club in terms of ticketing, in that the percentage of respondents indicating they'd renewed their season tickets for the coming season was really high. I think 97% of respondents said they'd continue season tickets for this season. Doesn't surprise us. We've got a very loyal fan base, and things are going well on the pitch, so that wasn't a huge surprise. That being said, 42% were really critical of the pricing, and 62%, which is 62% is a high number, isn't it? When you only 38%. On the other side, I know it sounds obvious, but when you think about that number, 62% were unhappy with having to pay for their new season ticket by the 29th of April, when the season was still in progress. And absolutely, to be renewing your season ticket when the season's still going on, you don't know what competition you're going to be in next season in terms of European football. It'll be interesting to see if the club remain or keep that, stay with that plan next season, or if they change it and maybe listen to. Because there was a lot of criticism at the time, wasn't there? And I'm glad that's been that's reflected in our survey, because there was a lot of fan dissatisfaction with that, and I don't see why football clubs generally can't wait until the close season to allow fans to renew their season tickets. It seems a bit harsh. Another area that was criticised, was the club's attempt to erode the principle of concessions, which with 70% of all respondents and 88% of over 65 agreeing with the decision to withdraw the young adult and senior concession categories from cut pricing, and 83% of seniors agreeing that concession should be linked to the person, not the seat. I mean, that doesn't need any further explanation, does it really?
Yeah,
it's, I think it's the. Go on, Rachel.
I was just going to say, and another thing that we're really, really sort of trying to get somewhere on, which is really not acceptable, is yes, there are certain areas of the stadium where in theory you can get a concessionary season ticket, but there appears, I mean, we're trying to get the transparency and the data on this, but there appears to be a cap on how many they'll give of seniors, and also a cap on how many juniors season tickets they'll give in a certain stand or a certain block that fits within that price. So it's not like you can't sort of guarantee that you can get a seat in an area where you will then get a concession, even though there are some
Completely. I mean,
available areas.
yeah. I mean, funnily enough, my son, my oldest, is now a young adult, so that
Yeah.
is great. And we're season ticket holders in the South Stand. We've got 3 there. But my middle son, Lewis, he's 15. But to get in the South Stand, we've had to get him a young adult ticket because there's that you can't get a child's concession in there. So it's one of those things where you just think if there was a bit more common sense, you know, he's almost 6 foot, he's tall enough to stand there. It just doesn't seem it would be helpful if they could maybe look at things like that. It just, for me, it gets on side, doesn't it, when there's a bit more of a common sense approach to these things, rather than it being just this is the decision and we're not going to change it. But yeah, very strongly reflected within our survey. So hopefully the club will take a look at that, and we will see another aspect of football and supporters' life in general that was very strongly reflected in our survey were broadcast times and broadcasters. They felt the wrath of our supporters. They fared very badly, as you might suspect, with 72% of UK respondents to our survey saying consideration of match-going fans had got worse during the 2021-2022 season. 41% said they'd been gone.
No, I was going to say one of our games got moved twice. Wasn't even just once. It was, wasn't it West Ham?
Yeah,
got moved twice.
Yeah.
You know, how can you possibly expect? We're trying to be green, and how can you expect people to book trains? You know, people don't all live in London either. They're coming from overseas.
Yeah.
It's got so many knock-on effects, and it's just not acceptable.
Well, 41% of our fans said they've been unable to attend a game, and they had tickets for because the kickoff time was then moved for broadcast, which is it's almost 50%. That's just a ridiculous number, and it's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to everybody. When you go to these games, you're looking at the season now. I'm looking at the season now. I'm looking at we're planning for October's half term. We're planning for Christmas. You're looking ahead and you're looking at what time the kickoff times are. And you know very well that Liverpool, for example, at home is not going to be 3 o'clock on a Saturday. So you just wonder if there was any way of us getting a bit more notice than them choosing when I don't know. But it just seems it seems very backward thinking in terms of, and as our fans have said, match-going fans are always the ones that are hit hardest. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? We were talking off air before. What are our favourite kickoff times? Well, my favourite kickoff time is 3 o'clock on a Saturday. And for us on the Southampton game, we were talking. So it was our first home game at 3 o'clock on a Saturday since 2019, which is ridiculous. And I know we've been in the Europa League for periods of that, but that's not acceptable, is it? Really?
No.
well, the irony was that I actually missed that game because I was away. I watched 3 o'clock on that Saturday. I was luckily I was watching Alloa play Kelty Hearts up in Scotland. I was away anyway, but it's just my luck to miss the Saturday 3 o'clock kickoff.
I think my favourite is Wednesdays at 8 o'clock, assuming it's Champions League.
Oh yes, good one.
It's interesting actually with the Wolves.
Oh, 7:45. Yes, I knew I was going to get that wrong.
I think they play the music, the Champions League music at that time, don't they? Which is always nice to hear. Nice to hear that back in a London stadium.
Can't wait.
Won't say any more than that. I think the one I don't like is, funny enough, this Saturday's game. I just hate the early Saturday kickoff.
Early Saturday.
It might be because it's hard, isn't it? It might be because I was a grassroots coach as well. So, you're coaching a team on a Saturday morning, you're coaching kids at 10 a.m. I can get to Spurs for 3 o'clock, but the 12:45, 12:30 kickoff, so I don't do it anymore. But for people who are investing in football at that late, it just seems, I just don't like it. I don't know why football has to be, why they need a game at that time on a Saturday morning. It just, for me, it's just illogical. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
I think kickoff times depend on how your team is doing as well, because sometimes 12:30 on a Saturday, it's nice to just get it out of the way and get it over and done with and get your weekend instead of, it's a bit like your homework, isn't it?
As long as we win. I always find that we tend not to win. I hope
totally.
that this Saturday will change. But we've had that run, haven't we? Yeah, early kickoff. Just we've been anyway. I think I'll move on. Just hopefully we will
I was
get.
going to say, I hate Friday
on Saturday.
nights. I think Friday nights should not be football. To me,
No.
if you want to go and see something, you know, go to a concert or a show or something, you should be able to book. I mean, I've done it before. Booked something on a Friday night, and you think, yes, we'll go to a concert or, you know, a band, and then you find out that we're playing West Ham on a Friday night. It's ridiculous. You've got to have some times when you can just book things with confidence.
Well, that and the 8 o'clock Saturday kickoff as well, when they've done the really late. Was it Liverpool
And
away
try
last
at home.
season? 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
What do you do? Who has come up with that idea? You know, it's just Saturday and Friday nights are not for football. That's where you talk about football.
And how do you get home?
I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But just to play devil's advocate, we've all watched games on a Friday evening and a Saturday evening, and as long as we keep watching those games, as long as we keep being TV audience, then that's where the problem lies. Like, you know, I don't know what you do to sort that out, but that's what I always think.
No, completely, Rob. And but what you do is, if I go to an away game on a Saturday 8 o'clock, or I go to an away game on a Friday night, unless it's in London, I'm going to be driving. You know, if it's up north, I'm going to be driving. So again, broadcasters really, if they want to talk about looking after, you know, being green and looking after the environment and doing their bit, they really got to look at that, because I can't imagine, you know, if Southampton are playing Newcastle at 8 o'clock on a Saturday or wherever on a Friday, most fans, they can't get home, they're going to be driving. And it just the broadcasters need to be aware of that, and they need to reflect that.
And to be fair, the club will put on coaches, but you know, as a woman, I'm not going to. I mean, the coaches have some drop-off points, but they're going to be dropping you off at like 5 o'clock in the morning. That just isn't something I would consider doing. Not feel safe. So I would stay up there. I'd book a hotel. Well, lucky me, I can.
Absolutely, and I'd do that as well. But again, if I was booking a hotel, particularly if I'm taking a couple of kids, I'd probably drive there, drive back, because otherwise you're booking the hotel, you've got to pay for 3 train tickets there, 3 train tickets back. It is actually cheaper to drive, unless you're just going up there on a Saturday and you're just getting a return ticket and you're there and back. So it's something for them to think of. Well, there we go. Hopefully some broadcasters will be watching and listening to our podcast and get that on board. One last thing to touch on, I guess, before we wrap this up, is if there's any sort of update on food banks and the work we've been doing with food banks. I know that obviously we're coming out after the Wolves game, but are we supporting it at local food bank for Wolves? And is there any general update that anybody wanted to give on that?
Yeah, we would basically, the food bank will be collecting once a month. And it is the Wolves game. We'll be tweeting about it so people will know. They collect by the Ledley King mural between 9:30 and 11:30 because it's an early kickoff. And this time they're looking for snacks of any kind and toiletries, but basically any dry product as well.
Brilliant. And the text number is still the same, isn't it? Which is 70085. But all that will be either on our social media or the club's social media. There'll be the first game of it, first Saturday of the month, or first game of the month rather, isn't it? First home game.
Brilliant. Thank you both. First of all, thanks to our viewers, for anybody watching this, and to anybody downloading this and listening to it. As we always say, you can watch these podcasts on YouTube, and you can listen to them on Spotify or iTunes, and they're also available via our website. We tweet about it on our and make people aware of our Facebook pages. Just please, as I said earlier, stay up to date with our social media channels, and hopefully you won't miss an update. And if this is your first podcast, if it's the first one you're listening to or watching, please go on and scroll back, go to our YouTube page, THST Official, and have a look. We've covered a multitude of things. But the couple of years we've been doing this, even including our big one on the European Super League, I think almost just over a year ago, which time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? All that's left for me to do is to say thanks to you, Rachel and Rob. And again, thanks to everybody for listening. Please stay up to date with everything we do. Give us some feedback. You can email us info@thhstofficial.com, and we'll be interested to hear on your ideas for up and coming podcasts. We will be having some guests on shortly, and we'll update you as and when we're doing that. So thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.